R.C. Hutchinson, in a book that he wrote called The Elephant in the Castle, tells about a man who's accused of a crime that he did not commit. He is, however, arrested for that crime, and only one person knows the truth. One lady knows that this man is innocent, but she doesn't want to get involved. And Hutchinson describes the scene in his book in these words. He said, "She found herself voiceless among the voices of anger and conflict. She knew that if she yielded to that impotence, no battlefield remained, and she would be cast as a permanent spectator." And I thought that was an interesting comparison. That's a picture of the football stadium in Paris. Now, of course, you know when I say football, I mean a round ball. Don't you know that? The football that we call football is football américain. But the real football, according to the French, is what we call soccer. And this stadium reminds me, as it can seat about 80,000 people, and it reminds me of 80,000 spectators, watching 20-some players out on the field. And it reminds me that the church cannot be that. That the church is not called to be spectators watching the professionals do something. That the church is something that brings us all into the body of Christ to touch this world with the good news of Jesus Christ. We cannot live separate from the world that is lost and in need. When Jesus challenged the disciples that day, some said, "Send them away. Let them find food for themselves." If you belong to Christ, then obedience to His word is expected. I think Carol, if I remember right, shared this map with you on Wednesday night. But I like this map just because it reminds me of some of the great needs in our world. By points of light, it shows the percentage of evangelical believers around our world. And yes, there are great needs in North America and South America, and I would never say there are not. But notice how bright the points of light are in comparison to modern-day Europe. And notice even how bright modern-day Europe is in comparison with North Africa and the Middle East. It shows us that there is still much to be done. Because Jesus said this gospel of the kingdom will be preached in the whole world for a witness to all peoples. And then the end will come. Maybe you've heard the arguments. I know I have too. Some say, well, we'll be concerned about people over there, but first we need to focus on problems right here. Well, we do have problems right here. But do we have the right to focus on our own problems only as Christians? Are we not called to seek to solve the problems of others? And didn't Jesus say, go? Well, those people over there, they'll get along all right if they're just sincere. Well, sincerity is important, but do you know it's possible to be sincerely wrong? One of the stories that illustrates that for me is when I was a young boy growing up, I came in out of the house one day and came into the table, and it looked to me like there was a half a glass of iced tea. And I said to my mom, "Is that iced tea?" And she looked at me and she thought I was kidding. And so she said to me, "Yeah." And so I picked it up and drank it. It was vinegar. I was sincere in my belief that it would quench my thirst. It didn't quench anything. And that's one of those things that I hold over my mom to this day. She feels guilty as a mother that she told me it was, but she thought I was kidding. And so she said, "Sure it is." But the sincerity didn't change the reality. Well, those nations over there, they just have too many children. Yes, but aren't they allowed to love kids as we love kids, and there's no Medicare in the African bush? Your children are your only social security. And didn't Jesus say, go? Well, if they just kill all those sacred cows in India, then they would be okay and they wouldn't be so poor. Yes, but did you know that Americans spend more on pet food every year than they do on sending the gospel around the nations to the world? And didn't Jesus say, go? Matthew 9 tells us that Jesus went through all the towns and villages, teaching in the synagogues, preaching the good news, healing every disease and sickness. When he saw the crowds, he had compassion on them because they were harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. And then he said to his disciples, the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Ask the Lord of the harvest to send out workers into his harvest field. You see, the truth is that there is one person in this story that we're supposed to follow. There is one person in this story that we're supposed to be like, and it's not Philip, and it's not Andrew, and it's not the 10, but we are called. Not every calling is the same. All are not called to cross the ocean, but all of us are called to a life of involvement, of commitment in fulfilling the Great Commission, in taking the gospel around the world. And despair in the face of that is inadequate. And cowardice in the face of that is not right. And to be without compassion in the face of that great need is just plain selfish. For Jesus Christ is the Lord of history, and he's the Lord of the church, and he's the Lord of lords, and the Lord of all men everywhere. And you may be only one, and you may not have much. But I'm convinced that 5 loaves and 2 fish and Jesus are still enough to change this world. The question is, are we willing to offer to him our 5 loaves and 2 fish?